Hey everyone, it's Drew Murray from D20 Advice, and today is another My 30-Day World. Oh, not now. Sorry, a chat thing came up. I don't remember seeing it before. Anyway, hi, and today is another thing. Just a quick reminder, Absolute Tabletop, the Kickstarter thing. This is a cool 30-day world project. Today, we are talking about, in the world of the Taihun, how are taxes and tributes collected in your world. Taxes are a rare thing. Taxes, however, and tributes collected in your world. I feel like in every other video, I'm essentially saying, depends on the kingdom. But depends on the kingdom. The dwarves act in a purely communistic way. No, they don't. Sorry, that's the norms. The dwarves act in a purely democratic way, is what I meant to say, and I didn't say that. I said communistic, but no, it's a capitalist democracy, as opposed to a communist democracy, which the gnomes have. So the dwarves, they will agree on what is donated by each person. They will collect it all, and they'll have regular tax collectors doing that sort of thing. Humans, you will have a tax collector from whatever the Jarl, King, Queen, noble in charge of that particular piece of land. You will have slightly larger human empires that will have dedicated tax collectors that will travel around to the different towns and villages and things to collect small tithes and whatnot. But it won't necessarily be money. It'll be resources to help strengthen the empire. That's, again, dependent human empire to human empire. When it comes to the elves have a complex tax system. They pay their parents. When I say complex tax system, I'm of course being a little facetious. Sorry, I'm playing with the coins that I had earlier. I'm going to move them away from me because I'm playing with them a bit too much. But yes, the elves have naff all in the way of a tax system. In fact, the elves, to me, generally represent the bad stuff of what you get, the idea of like American sort of Yankee noble families, like highbrow people. You've got the kind of trust fund kids going off and running their own cities, and everyone just maintains their own wealth. So there's not a lot in the way of the flow of economy, but because they're so long lived and they just like deal with the nitty gritty of things, they're all just like there with loads of art and like putting their money into things. So there isn't a lot in the way of general taxation. You just got the rich able to pay for soldiers, and when they can't afford to pay for soldiers anymore, someone who can afford to pay for soldiers takes over, which is one of the reasons why the elven society has stagnated into essentially just political backstabbing. Everyone's pretty much broke. They've still got like hundreds of thousands of gold pieces to their name. They've still got things to barter with. But in terms of any one elf gaining the ability to gather enough resources and money to usurp another elven noble in another town, that just really doesn't exist. Which is, again, another reason why the elves are so interested in these magical crystalline towers. Because if you find a new one and it's got brand new spells that no one else has, that's something that you could hold over your allies or enemies. Or frenemies? Alenemies? The other elves that will be their cousins and things. So the elves don't really have taxation. You will get the occasional like tithe to someone higher up in the family tree, but that won't be money necessarily, or even goods and resources. It'll be like passing along new stories, new bits of art and things. They'll have the occasional thing commissioned to be built for them and sent along, which accumulates to each noble's accumulated wealth, sort of net worth, but not the actual wealth they have. It's not worth anything to anyone else, really. So the elves are in a bit of a rut. At least that's when you're dealing with the high elves. What I've not really talked about with the Taihun is the wild elves. Back in version 3, there were the wild elves. In 5th edition, they're just the wood elves now. So your high elves, that's general elven society living in your cities. The wood elves are much more nomadic. They don't spend a lot of time dealing with others. Similar to a lot of other elves, they like to keep to themselves, but instead of going with all the corporate and political backstabbing, they live in very tribal states. They will live in small communities of about 100, 150 at push, and they will just hunt and gather. That is what they will do. They will live off the land and nothing more. They don't talk an awful lot, and when they do, it's quiet songs because they like to keep hidden. They're often sorrowful and mournful. These are the elves that, through song and through story, keep an accurate record of elven history, and it is full of loads of stuff that they're really ashamed of. So these wood elves, these wild elves, they keep that shame a part of them. They're like the joke that I heard a mate of mine make when I introduced this concept is Roman Catholics. That they are roaming Catholics. The people that are ashamed of things in their past and hold that deeply within them. So that's them. They have no form of taxation really beyond just you communalize all the resources of the town, and it just gets distributed evenly at the time. The gnomes, halflings just lump in with humans, by the way. But gnomes, pure communist. Everything that a gnome gathers in the terms of wealth essentially belongs to the gnome community. But because the community is constantly in motion, it's basically if two gnomes bump into each other, they'll ask each other for a thing and move on. They essentially exist as pure examples of independent operators. What you kind of get in the more optimistic views of Western capitalism, where you've got just people, ships passing in the night. Everyone is a rich ship passing in the night, just passing goods and services to each other and moving on. And everyone just looks after their own little ship. But instead, that's how it works with the communism of the gnomes. If any gnome is hard on his luck, then the other gnomes will come together to help raise that person up. Not so much in human towns and things, where it's a much more feudal state. There is no allowed accumulation of wealth. It's basically in the majority of human states, you'll have, okay, everything that you've made, this is what you're allowed to keep. Everything else is taxed. So there is no accumulation of wealth. There's no inherited wealth from generation to generation. Everyone's got to make it on their own, and it's really hard to make it. Which is why mercantilism and adventuring is so attractive to humans. Like, they need people to stay and run the farms, otherwise the farm collapses and the small town, the small community just dies out because they don't have the resources to keep things going. But on the other hand, if they could send an adventurer out to go and get riches and buy the food from the neighboring town instead and bring it here, that saved you a season's worth of harvest. You can let the ground recuperate and let it rest for a year instead. So there's a great deal of push for humans to go out adventuring because of the way they've set up their economic system. But each empire, each kingdom will have their own thing. So I'm not ruling out that there will be some human kingdoms out there that have a more fair system. But by and large, we're talking about medieval feudal states here. Unscrupulous lords and ladies taking what they can from the land, and just everyone's a serf below them. As I've mentioned, Dragonborn, not their own distinct race. They are born from every single other race, so you'll have just an occasional Dragonborn pop up in a human village. So there's no difference in taxation there. Orcs, I have established a bit further than just like nomadic sword fodder. Orcs are the way that dwarves are generally portrayed in media. So they are sort of mountainside city dwelling, whereas dwarves are inside the mountains themselves, and have this great sort of community spirit going on. Orcs are more about building things, surviving harsh weather, being better than each other, sort of drunken Scotsmen fighting each other sort of thing. That's generally how the orcs are, but they do sort of establish this this proper culture going on in the north. As part of that, the taxation will be similar to how it is. Excuse me. Whenever I have tea, I seem to burp a lot. I apologize. But the orcs will have a similar thing to the humans, in that is a general sort of feudal capitalist state for the most part. But when you're inside cities and things, if you're not like tilling the land and not working for a particular lord, if you're just a free orc wandering about, going about your own business, then you'll be paying a percentage of your tax. Sorry, a percentage of your profits, which will be self-declared, and you'll be looked upon by the rest of the community if you start splashing your cash. That rumor will start spreading around and eventually get to the chieftain's hut. We'll go, let's have a look at the books again, see how much tax he paid. But a lot of people can evade it. There's no computers. It's all based on that sort of thing. You can hire people to go and fudge with the ledger, that sort of stuff. So yeah, when it comes to taxation in those cultures, that's all I've come up with. When it comes to the Azamar and Tieflings, they're just kind of the half breeds essentially. So they just kind of pop up within whatever culture they're in. When you're dealing with celestial culture, I haven't established what the taxation is like. I don't know what Celestial's farm looks like, or even if they have farms, or if it's all just magic to them. I think it's going to be just all magic. Same with demons and Hellspawn and stuff. It's just a bunch of monsters rubbing up against each other. There's not going to be much in the way of civilization there, despite the fact that I want them to be somewhat sympathetic. But yeah, that's it for taxation, really. Taxation's boring. Why do I want to go on about taxation? But that's how wealth is moved about. So you will, for adventuring, you will get the occasional human kingdom with tax people going about the place. So you'll have the occasional horse and cart with a chest full of gold, or a couple of wagons full of like corn and wheat and carrots and cabbages and all that kind of stuff, right for the pickings, for thieves to come along and steal from, or adventuring parties to come and take from. Dwarves and things, because they're all self-contained cities, there's not a lot of that. Humans have got a lot of overland stuff. The elves, again, it's all sort of within communities pocketing stuff. So yeah, humans are going to be the most vulnerable. Gnomes as well. A gnome will carry all of their wealth with them and share it freely between each other. So gnomes, humans, and halflings, if you want to be a thief in the world of the Taihun, those are the people you target. Those are the most vulnerable. Those are the ones that are going to give you the most loot, most bang for your buck, that's least guarded. I assume that's something that the question was trying to stab at. But yeah, it'll be brilliant to get to watch some other videos. We're more than halfway there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I'll be back with another one of these tomorrow. See you later.